So let me tell you a little bit about what I've done and what I'm doing now and how it all sort of fits together. So my background is in theoretical physics. I studied physics as an undergraduate, and then I got a PhD in physics. And as part of that, in graduate school, I taught the core physics curriculum at Caltech in Pasadena, California. And I had a lot of success in the classroom, and I really enjoyed teaching. And I like the combination of teaching and technical subjects. And so over the past 7 or 8 years, I've been, as it turns out, what I had been working on, what I've realized is the common pattern, is I've been working on finding a way to turn that skill set and that passion into a living, into money. And so it's taken me a while to get to that point, though. So when I was in graduate school, I decided that instead of taking a traditional academic path, I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And so I did a couple of startups, both of which failed in various ways. And then I finally realized exactly what I should be working on, which is this intersection of explaining things and difficult or counterintuitive subjects. So that led me to my current venture, which is by design a single-person company. It's a Ruby on Rails tutorial called Ruby on Rails Tutorial. It was designed so that, among other things, it would rank well for internet searches, which has worked. And so what that has turned into is a way of turning my teaching skill set into a product. And so that's been out for a couple of years and has done really well, and I'm building on that foundation to continue to work on educational products. So we'll see in the next few years how that works out, but I've got some big plans. So one of the things I think about is just the realization that there's a lot of programming that comes hardwired with being a human, and I certainly feel that within myself, and it's something I observe in other people, that we're status-seeking primates. This is something that we do, and I try to keep that awareness that my happiness is not necessarily best served by always seeking the route to higher status, but that's where my drives are taking me, and so I think a lot of the challenge of living in the modern world is trying to live your life such that you enjoy it and that you have a good time, but that you also stay true to core values, and try not to always be driven by baser instincts. But it's a constant challenge to figure out how to balance those things and to satisfy the parts of your brain that you can't control, while still being true to higher values. There are some people who I sort of pop up in my mind because of my background in science. Some of my science heroes are scientists. So Isaac Newton is a hero, although he's kind of a weird guy, but he did amazing things. There are a bunch of great scientists whose work I really admire. Some of whom are not nearly as famous as they should be. Gauss and Euler are two of the best mathematicians and scientists of all time, and yet they're barely known outside of scientific fields. But I also admire guys like Benjamin Franklin, who sort of combined intellectual interest with the practical application. Franklin was really an entrepreneur. He was a tech entrepreneur. He did printing when it was new, relatively new. But it's and there's another sort of pure scientist. I sort of bounced back and forth between these practical guys and people who did just lived inside little bubbles. Richard Feynman was another one of my heroes, and having been at Caltech, I've gotten to know actually a lot of people who knew Feynman, and I've been involved in some projects associated with the Feynman lectures on physics. So Feynman was a great physicist, but I think he's much better known than some of his contemporaries, because he was also such an interesting person and such a colorful character. And so even though what I'm doing right now is very different from the way Feynman spent his career, I feel like the kind of joy that he lived his life with is something worth emulating and aspiring to. I mean, ultimately, it's hard to know what's driving you, but I have to admit it's probably very deep evolutionary programming to try to become really high status. So I suppose that what's driving me is a combination of these things that I can't control, that are part of my evolutionary legacy as a human primate, and combined with trying to maintain an awareness of that. Like, humans are unusual in that we're the only animal that really knows exactly what we are, at least that we're capable of knowing what we are. I think most people don't know what they are, but it's certainly possible to come to this awareness. Like, wow, I'm a living organism. My programs are designed to propagate genes, and like that's what I am. I'm a gene propagator. But that doesn't mean, like, that knowledge is sort of can liberate you from just executing those programs, and so I guess what's driving me is a combination of those. It's sort of trying to find the balance that will lead to a good and fulfilled life. So I think it's a constant. It's a constant struggle, but it's a constant joy. Like there's joy in the struggle of making your way in the world.